Okay, good morning, everybody. I don't know if you see my slides. Do I have So good morning. So I've been asked this morning to present the latest European legislative development that have an impact on the bioenergy sector. So as you know, energy is a shared competence between the European and the national levels. So basically there are decisions on energy that are taken at the European level and that have and will have an impact at the national level and therefore on businesses. And this is what we are doing at AEBIOM. It's the European Biomasa Association. We are following European legislative development, and we try to raise our voice and represent the interest of the industry to actually set up a legislative framework that is as favorable as possible for the industry. So I will present today mainly two things, is the 2030 climate and energy framework and the concept of the energy union. So the 2030 climate and energy framework. So as you know, the European climate and energy legislative framework has been set up until 2020 with the EU 2020 package that has set basically three binding targets for member states: 20% renewable energy, 20% energy efficiency, and 20% reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. So this is the framework until 2020. In Brussels today, European policymakers are discussing the framework for after 2020. And in last October, member states have voted on a little bit less ambitious package, which consists of three main targets: 27% energy efficiency and renewable energy targets, but that are non-binding at member states level. I will come back to that. And 40% greenhouse gas emission reductions. Why do I say that this framework is less ambitious? Mainly it's because in the 2020 package, for renewable energy, the EU as a whole had a target of 20% renewable energy that is translated into national binding targets. So for example, each member state has its own target to meet. For example, Spain has to reach 20%, Portugal 31%, UK 14%. So each member state has its own target, and if they do not reach their target by 2020, there will be infringement procedures against these member states. For the framework 2030 now, the difference is that the target for renewable energy is non-binding at EU level, which means that if by 2030 the EU as a whole do not reach 27%, there will not be any infringement procedure on member states. So basically what we fear is that without this binding target, there will be no incentive for member states to invest further in renewables and to invest in bioenergy, because we have seen that the policy measures of the 2020 package with the binding target has led to an important uptake of renewable energy investments in Europe, including bioenergy, which represents 62% of the EU consumption of renewables today in Europe. So in order for the Commission to somehow make sure that the EU will reach this 27% by 2030, the Commission will propose very soon, by the end of the year, a governance system which will basically mean a set of measures that the Commission will impose on Member States to ensure that we will reach the 27% by 2030. Sorry, I have something appearing. Regarding bioenergy, this 2030 framework has concluded that member states have concluded that we need an improved policy for sustainable biomass to ensure that biomass is sustainably produced, that is leading to significant greenhouse gas emission reduction, that is allowing a fair competition between I don't know what I have to do. I have something in Spanish coming up. Can you? I have this. I don't know what I have to do. So this. Do you see it? Yes, you see the next slide. No, let me just come back to this one, yeah. Sorry about that. So in this, so there is a willingness for member states to establish a policy and to further look into sustainable policy for biomass. The next point I wanted to raise is the concept of the energy union. The energy union is maybe, some people say that it's the most ambitious concept the EU has started since the creation of the internal market. Basically, it's a concept because the objective of this energy union is to integrate further member states on energy issues and mostly on 5 dimensions: energy security, internal market, energy efficiency, decarbonization, and research and development. So this energy union concept will not be translated into one legislation, but rather into a set of legislation, upcoming legislation that or revision of legislation that the Commission will take in the next 2 or 3 years. So here, for example, you see that it will be translated into the revision of the ETS sector, revision of the directive on security of gas supply, revision of the energy performance of building directive, revision of the energy efficiency directive. So all this will be done in the framework of the energy union, keeping in mind this objective of further integrating member states. Regarding bioenergy, there are 2 important actions that will be taken at the European level. The first one is the heating and cooling strategy. So the Commission has decided to come up with a heating and cooling strategy, and the renewable energy package will include a policy for sustainable biomass. Regarding the heating and cooling strategy, so the process has already started at the European Commission level. We are waiting for a first proposal on this strategy by 18 November. And this strategy will consist mainly on 2 documents. The first one is a working document, which will be an analysis of the heating and cooling sector. Because, as you know, until today, energy policy have been focusing mainly on electricity. And so we are very much welcoming now the focus that the Commission is putting on heating and cooling, which represent actually today 46% of the EU energy consumption. So the first document will be an analysis of the sector in order to understand better how this sector works. The Commission has actually organized a stakeholder meeting in the beginning of September. We at AEBIOM, we have taken part of this stakeholder consultation meeting, and we have seen the draft version of this analysis, and basically it will focus on buildings, on industry and services, and on the link between the electricity sector and the heating and cooling sector. We have done no comments on this, and these are available on the website if you want to check them. And then the second document of the heating and cooling strategy will be the strategy in itself. It will be recommendations, but the Commissioner has already announced that it will rather be a menu of possibilities and technologies available rather than real recommendation and strong measures. So we also have published our policy recommendation on this, and this is available on the website. Sustainability. There are the concerns around sustainability of biomass is not a new issue. The situation today in the EU is that there are some member states that have already endorsed quite ambitious criteria schemes. These are the Netherlands, UK, Belgium, and Denmark. They are mostly importing biomass countries, and they have endorsed already sustainability schemes. You also have some voluntary schemes like the Sustainable Biomass Partnership that will be presented, I suppose, this afternoon, which is basically a couple of utilities have voluntarily imposed to themselves sustainability criteria. So for the moment, there is nothing at the EU level. There is no EU legislation, so some member states have criteria, some others don't. The issue is that it creates some uncertainty for investors, and this is something that EU-wide sustainability criteria would change. And also, it's creating somehow trade barriers because national requirements of one member state are not the same of others. So, so basically, there is a need and there is a willingness by EU policymakers to come with a sustainability scheme for biomass. Where we are now, the Commission is only starting the process of working on a sustainability policy. The timeline is to come with a proposal by the end of 2016-2017. And this is it for the moment. We met the Commission last week, and basically they are really at the beginning of the process. We at AEBIOM, we have gathered a working group on sustainability, and we will have a position representing the industry view on sustainability criteria, and this will be available also quite soon. We're still working on it. What is the Commission? I mean, what might the Commission come up with? Of course, it's a big question mark. Apart from what we know is that the Commission will not reinvent the wheel. They will base themselves on what is existing. And apart from the national schemes and some voluntary schemes, there are already some legislation, some publications of the European Commission regarding sustainability. So I would like just to present quickly the two main documents that we have already at the European level. So the first one is a working document that is called State of Play on Sustainability for Solid Biomass. That was published in 2014. It's quite an interesting story with this, because in 2011 the Commission had decided to come up with sustainability criteria for solid biomass, but then due to internal disagreement among different DGs, among different ministries in the European Commission, they decided not to come with a sustainability scheme, but rather to come with a report, and this is the report where basically they conclude that there is no sustainability issue in the EU until 2020, and that they think that until 2020 we do not need EU-wide binding criteria, but that maybe that we will reassess the possibility for after 2020. And this report was quite balanced in terms of benefits and risk of biomass, so we were quite happy to see this document, not too negative, and also it gives some recommendations when it comes to greenhouse gas thresholds or greenhouse gas emissions calculations, and it gives also some default values. When it comes to sustainable forest management, the EU has a EU forest strategy which defines the sustainable forest management, but also that somehow impose some actions at the EU level, and actions that will feed the sustainability decisions. The first one is the creation of an ad hoc working group on sustainability, which consists of a group of member states that will discuss sustainable forest management, and that will come with recommendations, and that will directly feed, of course, the Commission that is working on sustainability policy. And the second one is a study on the cascading use of biomass. And this will, of course, feed as well the debate on sustainability. I also, and this is my last slide, I also wanted to show you how lively the debate is currently at the EU level, since the Commission has announced that they will work on a policy for sustainable biomass. There are a number of ongoing studies. It's a non-exhaustive list, but maybe, so the first on the top ones are the ones that are commissioned by the European Commission, and as you can see, those are studies that assess the impact. You have the resource efficiency impact, the carbon impact. You have, of course, the environmental impact on imports that is also assessed. So the Commission is now looking into all these and will, of course, this will feed policymakers' decision when it comes to sustainability. And then in the downside part, you have studies that are actually commissioned by stakeholders, and mainly NGOs. I know NGOs are not so powerful and influential at national level, but at EU level they are very influential, and policymakers really listen to them. And they are, of course, now very active with a lot of reports on bioenergy. And the last one, just as an example, is they they published their recommendation when it comes to the role of bioenergy in the EU climate and energy framework. And what they recommend is, one, a cap on biomass. Second, reassess the carbon neutrality of biomass. Three, of course, have binding and very ambitious sustainability criteria. And the fourth one is to introduce a legislation on cascading use of biomass. So this is, of course, quite dangerous for the bioenergy sector, so we are monitoring all that, and our response, because we want to be part of the debate, we need somehow to balance the debate. And so we are, with our working group, we will come with a position that we will, of course, advocate and communicate, and we have also launched a campaign, which is called Biomass Counts, and the objective of this campaign is to have a positive, balanced view of biomass, and to highlight all the positive benefits of biomass in terms of job creation, energy security, energy affordability, etc. So I invite all of you to have a look at www.biomasscounts.eu and support this. It doesn't cost anything, it's just supporting the campaign and the positive use of biomass in the EU. So that's it. Thank you.